Medieval time in Indian history is marked by the presence of Delhi Sultanate and the Mughals. The Delhi Sultanate reigned Indian subcontinent for nearly 300 years, from around 13th to 15th centuries. And in this time period, we see a unique revenue collection system that was introduced in India by the Delhi Sultans. This system is called as the Iqta. The term Iqta itself means territorial assignment, and it was a mechanism devised to collect and redistribute agrarian revenue. The holder of Iqta was called Mukti. This Iqta system was not indigenous. It was introduced in the 11th century in Central Asia. And when Delhi Sultanate was established in India in the 13th century, it was introduced in India also. The Iqta holders, who were called as Mukti, had no right over the peasantry and land other than the right to collect revenue, which was called as Mal. The peasants, for administrative or for judicial reasons, could approach the Sultan directly, and they were not dependent on the Mukti for any judicial matters. They were, by paying revenue to the Mukti, they ensured that they can live safely and with security. The amount of taxation was decided by the king. The Mukti had to maintain an army and ammunition to serve the king when required. The Mukti's territorial jurisdiction was called as Iqta. So basically, Iqta means a territorial assignment, and Iqta means the plot of land itself. So it has two different meanings. And in case of the territory itself, the Iqta was also called as Walis or Vilayat. When Delhi Sultanate was established in India, Iqta system was adopted in the 13th century. The Iqta plots were transferable, and these were not hereditary. In the beginning, these were not given on the basis of birthright, but these were given to officials who were appointed by Iltutmish, and later these were also given on lease or on contracts. The Muktis were allowed to outsource their responsibilities, so they can appoint other officials who can perform these functions like collection of revenue on behalf of the Mukti. The earliest Mukti were part of the cavalry that the Delhi Sultan Iltutmish raised in the early years of his reign. From Balban's time, an accountant was also appointed to assist the Mukti in the collection of taxes and their redistribution. As Delhi Sultanate expanded, the distant areas were categorized as Iqta, and nearby areas were called as Khalisa. So Khalisa means areas which were directly under the Sultan's reign, or the taxes were collected directly by the Sultan. Whereas in case of Iqta land, these were allotted to the Mukti for collection of taxes. Otherwise, all these areas were under the jurisdiction of Delhi Sultan. The soldiers were paid directly by the Sultan. In the later years of Delhi Sultanate, Iqta were given on contracts for a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time, and these were also allotted to people of diverse religious and ethnic backgrounds. During Tughlaq reign, the Iqta system continued, and the cavalry troop holders were given Iqta, and in this time the size of Khalisa also shrinked. By the end of Tughlaq period, some soldiers were also given Waj. So Waj is different from Iqta because Waj were at village level and Iqtas were a larger area of land. So other than Waj, the soldiers were also paid in cash, and sometimes they were also issued draft. And in case of draft, this can be cashed by the Mukti. During Sayyid dynasty's time, the Iqta system was continued, and several cavalry troops holders were also given Iqta or allotted Iqta in lieu of salary. So for example, during Mubarak Shah's reign, Iqta of Amroha was given to Sayyid Salim. In Lodi time also, the Iqta system continued as before, only the nomenclature changed. So now Iqta land holdings were called as Sarkar, and each of these Sarkar were divided into several Parganas. So the nobility or the members of the nobility were given this Sarkar, and they had to pay a certain assessed amount of revenue, which were called as Jama. However, these Jamas were not like fixed amount of revenue, these were simply assessment, because in some situations these Jamas were also waived off. Despite change in nomenclature, the Iqta system remained the same in Lodi time. So what we see is that in these years of Delhi Sultanate's reign, the Iqta system served the Sultanate in collecting taxes and in running the administration smoothly. So जब हम Iqta system की बात करते हैं तो इसको हम जो है एक रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन डिवाइस की तरह देखते हैं। ये जो है इसकी शुरुआत हुई थी दिल्ली सल्तनत के टाइम पे भारत में। इससे पहले 11वीं सेंचुरी में इसकी शुरुआत हुई थी सेंट्रल एशिया में। भारत में इल्तुतमिश की टाइम पे इक्टा सिस्टम को इंट्रोड्यूस किया गया था, और इसका मतलब है एक रेवेन्यू असेसमेंट सिस्टम। इसमें जो रेवेन्यू है उसको जो सुल्तान है वो असेस करते हैं, और इसके बाद जो इक्टा है उसको एक मुक्ति को दिया जाता है। जो मुक्ति है इस इक्टा के बदले वो किसी तरीके की जो है मिलिट्री सपोर्ट सुल्तान को प्रोवाइड करते हैं। सो ये बेसिकली एक एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव और फिस्कल डिवाइस है जिसकी थ्रू जो दिल्ली सुल्तान है वो अपने प्रशासन को संभालते थे। और हम दिल्ली जो स्लेव्स है उनसे लेकर लोधी डायनेस्टी तक इस सिस्टम की कंटिन्यूएशन देखते हैं। और जो चेंजेस हम देखते हैं लोधी समय पर वो था नोमेनक्लेचर को लेकर। सो बेसिकली जो टर्म है उसको बदलाया गया था, लेकिन जो इक्ता सिस्टम है वो वैसे ही रहते हैं जैसे दिल्ली सल्तनत की शुरुआत में उसको निकाला गया था। कुछ बदलाव हम देखते हैं जिसमें जो इक्तादार है उनकी कैरेक्टर में हम कुछ चेंजेस देखते हैं। जैसे शुरू में जो इक्ता दिया गए थे उन मुक्ति की जो एथनिक बैकग्राउंड है वो एक तरीके का एक यूनिफॉर्म था, और बाद में हम अलग अलग एथनिक बैकग्राउंड अलग अलग धर्म के लोगों को भी मुक्ति बनते हुए देखते हैं। इसके साथ ही ये जो ट्रेडिशन है कि एक पर्टिकुलर प्लॉट ऑफ लैंड को एक मुक्ति को दिया जाता है, और उनका जो राइट होता है उसमें वो होता है टैक्स कलेक्ट करना और जो पीस है उसको मेंटेन करना। उसी तरीके की जो सिस्टम है उसको हम बाद में फिर वज में देखते हैं, जो इसमें एक गांव को एक जो है सोल्जर को दिया जाता है, और जो सोल्जर है वो उस गांव से